Hi, I'm Andy Fish, and I'd like to give a shout out to the amazing Ames Public Library. Ames Public Library was instrumental to the founding of our local coalition as Ames Reads in 2012. They've done so much for the campaign. They've presented about the campaign for grade level reading at the Iowa Library Association and presented at Iowa Campaign for Grade Level Reading meetings. They offer so many great community services, such as serving as a site for free meals with the USDA. They serve over 100 kids daily each summer since 2015. They also contribute to summer learning enrichment programs since 2014 and host childhood and school readiness programs. The library has such a service to Ames and to the Story County. Thank you so much, Ames Public Library.
Welcome everyone to GLR Week 2022. We're excited that you all could join us today and hopefully the rest of this week. We are going to get started in just a second, and I will go ahead and share some housekeeping tips when we get started. Alrighty, welcome everyone to GLR Week 2022. A few housekeeping tips that I wanted to share with you today. We do invite you to introduce yourself using the chat box. If you can share your name, city or state, and your organization. And when responding, be sure to select both panelists and attendees so that we all know who is here. The webinar is being recorded and will be made available to all who registered. Additionally, we do invite you to post any questions that you may have during the conversation into the Q&A box. We will be inviting the panelists on the session to provide written responses to any of the questions that you may be posting. All resources that you see shared in the chat box will also be shared in a follow-up email to all registrants. Additionally, we invite you to take the brief poll that will be posted right at the end of the session. The responses that you share will help us with our commitment to continuous improvement. Additionally, we are excited to share that we are offering live ASL interpretation services during this session and all plenary sessions this week. Thank you in advance to those helping us, and you will see them on your screen throughout the entirety of the conversation. Again, I am lucky to introduce you to GLR Week 2022, happening this week, July 18th through the 22nd. The focus of this week being bright spots and silver linings. As we continue through, I would like to invite you to join us for all of our upcoming sessions that we have later this week. Tomorrow, Tuesday, July 19th, we invite you to join us for a session on mining the bright spots and silver linings. On Wednesday, July 20th, we will be discussing state and local funders using the $65 billion to advance digital equity. Thursday, there will be a community coalition organization celebrating community and cultivating resilience. And Friday, an invitation-only consultative conversation. Registration and more information will be posted in the chat box, and we hope you can join us. Finally, we would love to encourage you to connect and engage with us this week on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. On Twitter, follow us at Reading by Third. On Facebook, like us at Campaign for GLR. And on LinkedIn, follow us at Campaign for GLR. Please use the hashtags GLRweek and hashtag bright spots silver linings to share any thoughts that you may have during this conversation and all of the conversations this week. Alrighty, throughout GLR Week 2022, we are recognizing the importance of public libraries, not only for their role in the campaign for grade level reading, but also for their part in serving their communities as a hub, a connector, a beacon for civil society, and a place for learning, resilience, and discovery. Our community and state leads have shared their big shout outs, recognizing the amazing work of their public library partners. And you just heard from Ames Reads community lead about their amazing partnership with the Ames Public Library. Now I'm going to go ahead and get started with a quick video.
I am, to my own heart and soul, a children's librarian. I've worked for nearly 35 years serving kids and families as my North Star. I see firsthand how reading aloud with a young child can transform their learning, how stories can build kids' resilience and empathy and imagination, and how bonds and families are formed through story time, play, and book sharing. Library staff help wire growing brains for learning and life success for everyone.
Libraries play a really critical role because they're the ones that can help elucidate for all of us that landscape. So let me take you back 15 years ago, because it began with a simple noticing that in fact educators, as they talked about their classrooms, their library spaces, other learning sites, we heard them repeatedly saying, I'm just not connecting with kids the way that I used to. 15 years ago, we started making a bet on what today we call Remake Learning. And Remake Learning is today a network of more than 600 schools, museums, libraries, early learning centers, creative industries, campuses of higher education, all of whom are working to advance relevant, engaging, equitable learning.
The challenge of and the need for digital literacy and access to the internet is not a new need. And libraries have historically played a strong role in the digital literacy and providing access to the internet for communities. So at the San Jose Public Library, we had always noted that even pre-pandemic, that we were the largest provider of public computing and free Wi-Fi in at least Northern California. And this is certainly true post-pandemic as well. And our first priority was really with the schools, recognizing that anyone who didn't have access to the internet was cut off from their educational opportunity. At libraries, we also felt that anyone who didn't have the internet suddenly didn't have access to library resources, which essentially, is First Amendment protected free speech and content and information that folks need to learn, and during a time when they needed it more than ever.
I help to bring early learning spaces, story and play programs into everyday spaces like laundromats, where we know families have upwards of a 2-hour wait time each week. And kids often have nothing more productive to do than to stare at the machines. This work also happens in WIC centers, family courts. We're even placing one in a funeral home, and we have a pilot project in a county jail. We know through research, a young child's brain grows at an exceptional rate during the first years of life. Language and play are the vehicles through which a healthy child develops.
We were really concerned about the fact that we were in a little bit of a book desert for a lot of our housing developments. It took anywhere from 15 minutes to a half an hour to an hour on the bus for families to be able to get to the libraries. We also discovered that many of the families didn't have books in the home that they owned. So we really wanted to make sure that our families had the accessibility to books and to be able to encourage the child's love for reading.
We know now that this summer and the coming summers are more important than ever. And again, the work that libraries do to help kids catch up and propel forward, especially in response to COVID, is more important than ever.
We went from doing programming and things largely in person to moving to a hybrid and a completely virtual kind of environment to deliver programming. So, getting over that learning curve and learning hump to do that successfully and well, with as much interactiveness and creativity as possible to maintain those connections through the electronic medium was certainly a challenge for a lot of folks. But I also saw folks being innovative in that space too.
Well, in California, something close to half of the 6 million students in public schools qualify for the federal free or subsidized lunch program. And of those 3 million kids in the summertime, about 10% of them get meals as opposed to getting a meal every day in school. So if you take a step back from that, if you're hungry, you can't learn. And so summer also poses challenges. So here's what they often call summer slide, where you're sort of reading skills and everything else go on pause, and at the same time you're hungry, that's a recipe for disaster. By families coming to the library, getting a meal from lunch at the library, plus some books, plus an enrichment kit or some kind of a mental puzzle or challenge or craft type project. It's just it tags so many positive bases. It's hard to understand why more money isn't being invested in.
We definitely could not do the work that we do without the public library system. Not only are they partners at our events, they are hosting events, they make the libraries accessible to our families. They host special events at the libraries for our families. We are hosting story times on site for those families who are unable to get to the library sites. And they come around to our developments with the mobile bookmobile. So for families who are unable to come to the library, they make sure that they are coming to the families. It really makes our public housing families feel included in the community and like they have a home at the library when they go.
When we think about libraries and the roles librarians can play in the summer, I think of the relationship building aspect that's so important. Knowing an actual librarian, a person who cares about you and knows your name and sees you day in, day out, to help you. So much mentoring, so much tutoring can take place inside a library, and we know how critical those experiences are.
Here's a family, and they come to the library, because the kids are hungry, and this is a place where the family knows, based on their experience, that it's a safe environment. It's a place where nobody's going to judge or question them. If California were to invest in a greater number of stronger readers, a lot of some of our most challenging issues wouldn't become as challenging. Because of what libraries do and because of what they can provide, there's a whole lot more benefit that's going on beyond simply addressing the issue of a kid who's hungry.
I think that libraries have a unique and important role in mitigating digital equity issues and digital access issues. Now, nationally, but in San Jose, our library system was uniquely positioned to execute this work plan because 1 month prior to the first stay-at-home orders in our city were announced, we actually received approval from our city council for the city's first education policy, which was led by the library department. And it memorialized the library as the city's lead department on all education issues. So the library's ability to centralize, to process large amounts of data and materials and distribute to established locations throughout the city was an important element of this effort. And you think about that, libraries all over the country have those capacities just built into our DNA.
We've also had many mothers who are very hesitant about reading to their children because English is not their first language, or they never finished high school and they just are not confident with their reading ability. And when they attend the story times at our properties, where it's the librarian and just a few families, 5 to 10 families, and they see how the librarians do the story time, and they encourage them to read the books without necessarily reading the books, using the pictures and how to talk with their children about the books, and how it's okay if they don't read word for word or if they mess up the words. To see the confidence that is built in the mothers and the ability to interact with their children and to be their child's first teacher is just breathtaking to watch.
We've seen tremendous growth in this work across the country. What started as a kind of fresh and funny idea has grown into almost 300 sites across the nation. Elected and civic leaders are now taking this work on, and we're seeing citywide networks coming from mayors, school districts, and public libraries of read, play, and learn sites growing and stemming from that mayoral initiative. Summer Learning, in partnership with the National Summer Learning Association, is now an annualized part of our programmatic offerings. Over 100 libraries are providing early literacy program in laundromats, with more being added each week.
Internet access is a commodity, and the more you pay for that commodity, the better service you get. And that, it's completely antithetical to the belief of public libraries, to the entire, purpose that we are working towards as a library, but also as a community. When so you have this tension between wanting to, democratize access and the fact that it is a business economy, essentially, currently. So that's a challenge we continue to debate and discuss. And, the library will continue to provide free access whenever we can.
There's been a steady increase both in the number of library locations that participate and the number of meals served. And I think part of that is just people becoming aware that you can go to the library and get a meal. I mean, I've testified in front of legislative hearings where a legislator will say, well, why are libraries being forced to do this? And it's like, they're not being forced to do this. They're stepping into the breach, and they're doing it because they know that this is what's helping their community and the families that live in it. And it's startling to me. Some of the statistics are that for the percentage of hungry Californians who are getting meals at libraries in the summer, for 13% of them, which doesn't seem like a lot, but it really is, for 13% of them, that's the only meal they're getting during the day. It's a really vexing and challenging problem, but it's so fundamental. And I think we can all do a better job of providing the meals and ensure that less Californians go hungry if we're all talking to each other and working together. And more of that is occurring the longer this program has been in place.
Every young person, when they walk into that programmatic space, that they're greeted by a staff person that has the knowledge as well as the skill and that competency to serve those young people at a high level. And especially if that's happening in K-1, 2, that's really setting them up for success down the road.
We can't expect a mom to sit down and teach her child the colors or the ABCs when they're worried about how they're going to pay the bills this month. Is the electric still going to be on? Will they lose their housing? Can they provide food? So we are working with the families when we're in home to help find them resources, to make sure the electricity stays on, to help find them food, to meet those basic needs. So then they feel comfortable and less stressed that they can take the time to help their child's learning.
So public libraries exist in order to provide access to information, knowledge that folks would need to participate effectively in a democratic society. Again, that access needs to be provided for free. Otherwise, you're going to be exacerbating social differences in community, and you're going to be holding back communities, especially children of color, who really need access and to educational outcomes so that they can compete.
I think in many respects, they're now community hubs. There's a terrific book called Palaces of the People that talks about how a vibrant library in a community builds that community's resilience. Libraries actually represent the best of human beings. So we create these places that are filled with information and tools for you to succeed and thrive. You being anybody. And I think that in part, that's what's contributed to the growth in lunch at the library, is that libraries look outward, right, and see this need in their community that's being unmet, and recognize that what they can do is different, right, in that it can be more comprehensive than what a lot of other meal sites offer.
They're the anchor in so many ways, and they're the ones that can connect so brilliantly to early learning centers, to after-school programs, to schools themselves. And I suspect that libraries will be at the forefront as we think about credentialing learning, as we think about supporting this learning landscape, as we think about connecting smartly with parents, families, and caregivers in ways that support learning. I can't imagine this work happening without libraries again at the forefront, as they have been time and time again.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Siobhan O'Loughlin-Reardon with the Campaign for Grade Level Reading, and we are excited that you have been able to join us for Grade Level Reading's gratitude reception, celebrating the enormous contribution of public libraries, not only as a community hub, but as a real partner with the Campaign for Grade Level Reading networks across the nation. Thank you again to our friends and colleagues, Liz McChesney, Greg Baer, Greg Lucas, Jill Bourne, Aaron Dworkin, Roderick Clark, and Tiffany Pizzino for their wonderful contributions to the video you just watched. Before we bring on our panel, the Campaign for Grade Level Reading would like to give special recognition to all libraries that have stepped up to support their communities during a time of crisis. Excuse me. Immediately, Uvalde, Texas, and Buffalo, New York come to mind, but there have been far too many more that need mentoring, unfortunately. When we asked our state leads to nominate a library in their community as an exemplar of community service, we received the following nomination for the Uvalde Library. El Progreso Memorial Library and its staff provided a sanctuary during this ongoing tragedy. They attempted to heal all of us by sharing the power of reading with children in the community. In an article with the Austin American Statesman, quoted, I quote, 8 days after 19 students and 2 teachers were killed in their classroom at Robb Elementary in Uvalde, children's librarian Martha Cameron sat in front of several children at the Progreso Memorial Library for her weekly story time. She did this just 24 hours after the massacre. Quoting the library director, Mendel Morgan, I was gut-wrenched about what to do. We wanted to be respectful and not minimize or diminish what happened, but for the sake of the children, we must go on. Similarly, John Spears, executive director of the Buffalo and Erie County Public Library, explained how staff of the Meriwether Library, located just across the street from the top supermarket where that tragedy occurred, served as ground zero for law enforcement and the entire East Side community of Buffalo. Staff insisted that the library doors remained open to enable community to unite, support one another, and begin the healing process. We appreciate you all for your constant and unwavering efforts and support provided to the communities you serve. Thank you. It is now my privilege to introduce you to today's panel, who will discuss the role of libraries in a rapid and ever-changing environment. As moderator, Susan Hildreth, now a library consultant, was the former director of the Institute of Museum and Library Services. She serves on the Contra Costa County Library Commission. She served as ALA treasurer and was fellow with the Aspen Institute's Future of Public Libraries. She was a distinguished practitioner in residence at the University of Washington High School and led the Institute of Museum and Library Service from 2011 to 2015. Joining Susan are our 4 co-discussants, Melanie Huggins, who is the executive director of the Richland Library in Columbia, South Carolina. The Richland Library received the 2017 Medal for Museum from the Museum and Library Services, the nation's highest honor for libraries. Richland has also received a 2020 and 2021 ranking in the state of South Carolina as a top place to work. And Melanie herself has received recognition from several local and state entities. Her work is influenced by her belief that libraries are uniquely positioned to make communities more livable, resilient, and inclusive. Pilar Martinez is the Chief Executive Officer of the Edmonton Public Library in Alberta, Canada. It is an award-winning library where she is responsible for leading 650 staff and managing a budget of $69 million. She has championed numerous innovative services, including community-led and digital initiatives such as 3D printing. Pilar has a broad space of experience in executive leadership, including advocacy, strategic planning, and change leadership. Erin Silva, who is the board member from the Association of Rural and Small Libraries, or ARSL, joins us from Iowa City. She is the Youth and Teen Services Librarian at the North Liberty Library. Her job allows her to incorporate her passion for advocacy and inclusivity for children and teens from all walks of life. She wears many hats at her library and currently serves, as I said, on the board of the Rural and Small Library Association as the Midwest representative. And finally, last but certainly not least, Felton Thomas Jr. He's the Executive Director and Chief Executive Officer of the Cleveland Public Library. He has been there since 2009 as director of the library. Felton has launched initiatives aimed at addressing community needs in the areas of access to technology, education, and economic development. His awards and accomplishment include being named Mover and Shaker by the Library Journal and being named White House Champion of Change for Change for Making in 2016. With that, I want to have Susan take it away. And enjoy the conversation, everyone.
Okay, thank you, Siobhan. I think we're going to get to see all our smiling faces here. There we go. Okay. So greetings, everyone. It's great to see all of you. And it's so exciting to be here. We're going to have a wonderful discussion. And if you have specific questions you'd like us to answer, please feel free to put them in the Q&A. We'll try to get them to them if we can, but we also have some questions ready to go. So first of all, I'd like to thank the wonderful panel that we have with us today for stepping up and spending some time with all of you. And I'd also like to shout out to the Campaign for Grade Level Reading. You know, in our lives as librarians, sometimes we have to explain like why we're good, what do we do, why we're important, the impact we make to partners all around our communities. But you never have to do that with the Campaign for Grade Level Reading. They really understand and get, and they want us to be partners, which is really exciting. Before we get started, just a real quick shout out. I'm looking at the chat and I'm seeing a lot of those California folks, library folks and other folks. So not that everybody isn't wonderful to be here, but hey, thank you California folks for chiming in. So here we go. You know, the video that we watched was just, it was just amazing. The way the themes were drawn together and our spokespeople there. So panelists, what struck you most about that video? Do you have any of the initiatives in your library system and what's the impact? So since we're seeing Pilar here, I'm sorry, no, Erin, Erin, are you ready to talk? We're seeing Erin on the screen.
Sure. I don't know why I'm the first one to be seen on screen, but I feel like the laundry cares and the lunch at the library, those are, you know, coming from a small system and by no means not the smallest in our state. It's really, I think those are initiatives that are maybe easier for some of our smaller libraries to get behind and implement in ways that feel successful, because I think most of our towns have some sort of laundromat, and also the ability to get the community to come together for food resources. I mean, I started doing that in my library when I started here about 6 years ago, even just with the snack program, because I kind of witnessed, you know, kids being here for most of the evening and not going home during the dinner hour, and recognizing the challenges that come along with hungry babies and hungry bellies usually leads to some behavioral issues. And we were able to kind of have a cohesive way of giving them a snack and then also doing that relationship building that is so important within our libraries. And so those were the ones that stuck out to me as well.
Oh, thank you so much, Erin. And again, you were not the only one on the screen. I didn't have my gallery view right. So here we go. Zoom tricks. There you go. All right. Who else would like to chime in? How about our wonderful gentleman Felton? There you go.
Yeah, I got myself here. I'll jump right on in. And I think what kind of stuck out for me was Greg Luce's comment that libraries are stepping into the breach, right? And that's true in so many different ways. And I think, you know, a lot of the things, you know, we do are similar to what we're shown in the video. But I think one area that goes to and that I wanted to mention today about housing and why housing is so important for the stability of our families was the fact that for our young scholars, we do a program called our Young Scholars, getting kids ready for kindergarten. Many libraries have kindergarten clubs and get kids ready for kindergarten. We found that so many of our young children were in unstable homes. They were moving once, twice, 3 times within the year, and going to a different one of our libraries every time. And we recognized that we needed to do something as an answer for the instability. So our community libraries got together and we decided that our one community read would be Evicted by Matthew Desmond, because of the 9,000 evictions that happened in 2018, most of them were happening to young women of color, especially with young children. These were the kids who could not get ready for grade level reading or kindergarten because they were having such unstable lives. So by doing that, we did programs and worked with our legal aid society, and there was a big push within the community to move forward with something that was going to change that. And so our council came around in 2019, passed the right to counsel, which means that every woman with children will get counsel when they go before an eviction board. And so today, I mention this because today, that housing court and the judge came in, and we are having a space that we're available for people to actually come in and do housing court in one of our libraries, right? So it's called, court in the community. And so the judge was there, and we did the kind of cutting of the ribbon. And so basically there's a bailiff, and people can come in, and basically they go into this little room and they do video chat with the judge. And basically it's some way of their biggest issue, which is being able to get downtown, being able to get into one of our libraries and be able to do it. So once again, there are ways that libraries can be a part of a solution to help create more stability in our kids' life without actually having to do some of the social work that comes along with it.
That is terrific, Felton. The bailiff in the library, I love that. So how about you, Pilar, our neighbor from wonderful Canada? What's happening and what really spoke to you in the videos? We're not hearing you, Pilar. How about, Melanie, do you want to jump in and then we'll try to get Pilar in the next round?
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you. Thanks, Melanie.
I just want to respond to what Felton just said, actually. And what resonated with me in both the comments about the partnership with housing authorities and with we call them summer break cafes here because we try to make them sound celebratory. And that's kind of part of what resonated with me about what Felton just said, is that when you come to the library, you could be here for anything. Nobody has to know that you're meeting with the social worker. Nobody has to know that you're late on your rent. No, when you come as a child to one of our summer break cafes, it feels like you are having a picnic at the library. We have balloons, we have, party plates. We try to make it feel dignified and celebratory. And I think that is a real, part of the customer experience that I know in my library and other libraries that we try to provide for people. It's not just that we're providing the service, we're trying to make them feel like they have agency. And what we know for those of us who do things like emergency rental assistance, because we do have social workers that provide, help people sign up for rental assistance programs, is that they don't have a lot of agency. The hoops that they have to jump through to access some of these programs I don't know about you all, but here in our summer break cafes, because they're funded by the US Department of Agriculture, they can't even take the food home with them.
Yeah.
They have to eat the food in the library, which just burns my biscuits. But I think that go all Southern on y'all. But yeah, I think that's the thing that really, resonates with me through strand of all those videos, is that when we meet people where they are, we do it in a way that treats them with dignity and respect. And I think that's just part of how libraries do their work.
Sorry for the dead air. Thank you, Melanie, very much. Now, Pilar, can you try again and see if your audio is working?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, great.
Oh,
thank you.
Oh, thank you for your patience. So I was just saying, it was just such an honor to be part of this panel. So thank you so much for having a Canadian on board. And I think what struck me so much about the videos was the amazing creativity and innovation and inspiration. Now I think it's such, these initiatives are such great fits with public libraries, because I think we know that public libraries are that welcoming, similar to what Melanie spoke about, that welcoming and trusted space. And I think we have such a big impact. We have such big reach in our communities. And we know that poor reading skills contribute to less chance of getting employment, higher chance of being incarcerated, the whole gamut. There's so much research in terms of the benefit of reading. And I think these things have just been exacerbated by the pandemic. So I do think public libraries have a big part to play in supporting that lifelong learning and reading. And a couple of the things that we do, we have a really interesting partnership. And partnerships also is one of the themes I heard in the video with our health services. So we are funded by healthcare federally, however, it's administered provincially. And we have two programs in collaboration with our health service unit, because literacy is a health issue. And I think it's taking it more seriously than just a nice to have. So one is a welcome baby program where we deliver a board book and some rhyming CDs and some poems and rhymes and a coupon for a library card at a baby's 2-month immunization. So the health nurses give the kit just after the child receives their immunization. So they love it because it gives something for the child to do as they wait to see if they have a reaction. And then the other program that we do with the Alberta Health Services, which is a research-based program, is called Sing, Sign, Laugh, and Learn. And I think getting kids reading at the earliest age as possible, that kindergarten readiness even earlier, just as they get out of the womb, I think is critical. And the idea that it was developed in collaboration with their early intervention unit at Alberta Health, getting kids to use signing to be able to communicate when they can't yet say their words to reduce frustration. They learn to love the sounds of rhyme and get ready for that reading. And it's evaluated by the health unit nurses. It's such a great program. And I think that's just another example of how we can make a big difference by collaborating with sometimes units or organizations that we don't always expect.
Oh, thank you, Pilar. That's terrific. So, you mentioned this, Pilar, as well as other folks, about the importance of partnerships in getting our work done. They are so important. So I'd like you all to think a little bit about the types of partnerships that you are involved in, what that cooperation looks like, and also how do you move past a partnership that isn't working, because that does happen. And one other quick question, it was so exciting in our videos to see that libraries and schools in many cases are working very well together. But I have to say, during my career, that's not always the case. Although everyone in the public is like, hey, libraries and schools, you should be working together. Why not? And there are all kinds of reasons why that may or may not happen. But I would love to hear from our panel any thoughts about what good partnerships look like, how we can deal with those that maybe don't work that well, even some examples. And have you had a effective time working with your schools? And if not, maybe why not? So everybody looks like they understand that question. Anybody want to take a stab at it? Melanie, you look like you might be ready. You ready?
Sure. So I know the other panelists will have good examples too. So I'm going to mention this one because it's so tied to the campaign for grade level reading efforts. Like many states, South Carolina is a read to succeed. We have read to succeed legislation, which we all know that means that if you're not reading on grade level by third grade, you are retained or you go to a mandatory summer reading camp. An outside group did an evaluation of the effectiveness of those summer reading camps several years ago. And I read that report with real interest about what really helped. So you're making these children go. They're not necessarily convenient to the parents. They're not full day. So you have to find something to do with your kid the rest of the day. So there were real inconsistencies about the way these summer reading camps were run. And so several years ago, I'm a part of the Aspen Global Leadership Network, as you know, Susan, and as my Aspen project, a partner and I reached out to the Department of Education and we said, okay, we've read this evaluation. We think the public library can play a role in strengthening the quality of these summer reading camps. And so before the pandemic, several years before, the library took the lead on developing what we called a Read to Succeed symposium. And it was done in the early part of the calendar year, right before grants were due for those schools to try to get grant funding to support from the Department of Education to support those summer reading camps. The first year we did it, we had about 80% of the school districts in the state sent a representative to this camp. These are paraprofessionals that work in schools. Sometimes they're their after-school provider. They don't get continuing ed opportunities. They don't get treated like the professionals that we know that they are. And we put on an amazing conference with Department of Ed and some other partners. We asked each person that came to bring a partner from the community. And we spent time during that all-day session that we held at one of our libraries that happens to have a conference center attached. We fed them well, we treated them well, but we spent part of that day helping them plan their summer and hearing best practices from others around the state. The first year that we did that, I would say the library did 80% of the work and our partners did about 20, but the evaluation was so strong and so good. The Department of Ed, who was lukewarm about us being involved at all in the beginning, were like, oh my gosh, we have to do this every year. And now we don't even take the lead on it anymore. We're just a program provider. But the reason I share this as a success story is that sometimes it's really hard to partner with schools. And I know that some of our panelists will have good examples of how to do it. But we found partnering with Department of Ed around the Read to Succeed legislation was something they were struggling with and they didn't know what to do with, and they really welcomed our assistance. We did have MOUs and MOAs with all the partners, so we knew who was responsible for what, and that helps tremendously, clarify partnerships and helps you get out of things that aren't working. But it went on for 4 years before COVID, and I think they're bringing it back in the next year. But again, now we're just a program support and partner where we were the ones that started it.
That is an amazing story, success story. And also so interesting that you kind of looked at this evaluation and said, wow, we can really help here. That was very timely. So any other comments about partnerships? I'm sure we've all had to deal with them. Felton, go ahead.
I'll speak to that because, when you're in the library, everybody wants to partner with you, but they really don't want to partner with you. They want to take what you can give them, and they really not give as much back as they give to you in some ways. And so you really have to kind of work through what a partnership is. And so we've worked on 3 very simple concepts for what we call parallel partnerships. 1, both sides need to know each other's mission and really be committed to helping each other commit to the success of their mission, right? Which is many times people don't really know very much about what the mission of the library is. And so that is really important for them to understand what we're trying to accomplish. 2, always trying to build on the successes so we can continue that partnership long-term. And then 3, to look out for each other. And I'll give you a classic example. One of our favorite partners is Legal Aid Society. I talked a little bit about what we've been doing in housing or whatever. And out of the blue, the NFL gave not out of the blue, but NFL came into the city of Cleveland and said, we're going to provide some money for organizations. They picked out Legal Aid Society and they decided to give them $75,000. And they came back to Legal Aid Society and said, we actually have another $75,000. And Legal Aid Society said, you should give it to the library. And I was just like, we were just like, what? They were going to give you $75,000, and they were like, "Felton, we want you guys to be successful. We want you to continue in housing and being committed to making sure that people are being able to have the things they're needed." And that $75,000 ultimately has led to us being able to have housing court in one of our libraries. So those are the three simple things that we look at when we're doing partnerships. And I talk, when my staff come to me all the time, I said, is it a parallel partnership? If it's parallel, then we're in. It hasn't been the case with the schools often, because the schools often aren't really caring about where, looking out for you or looking out for your mission. But after very good conversations around this, and when you're clearly able to define what is a partnership for you and what is a success for you, the other organization will understand. And that has really helped us with our school district.
That is good to hear. And I love that, parallel partnerships. That is terrific. Okay, Erin, go ahead, please.
So one of the things, speaking on behalf of the school partnerships, I did not start this, but I was in on the creation of, we were able to get our Iowa City, Coralville, and North Liberty. We all have the same school district, even though we're in different towns. And we were able to finally get the program off the ground to be able to use the Iowa City School District's student ID cards to be library cards in each of our libraries. And it was based off of what Nashville Public Library does. And it can often be really, really hard to just get into the schools to speak to the kids. And then also the communication between like the local library staff and then the school librarians, but then also the principals, and then, the superintendent to be like, hey, we have this great program. Now it's up to you guys to push it out because, you don't have anything else to do in your, 8-hour chunk of day. And so I think that's something that it's important for all of us to keep in mind, is that like we can have all these great initiatives and be involved in different partnerships in different places, but being able to have the people on the ground to push that information out can be really overwhelming. And even just taking the school teachers as an example, like think about how much stuff they have to do during the day, and then when we add one more thing, it's like, oh, hey, by the way, the library really wants to remind you that you need to do this and this and this and this, and so I just want us to kind of all be cognizant of the fact that I would be at the schools every day if I could, but a lot of times they don't have the time for us to even like pop in and talk to their classes. So it is interesting to see how these wonderful large picture ideas then can get funneled down to be workable for our especially small and rural libraries.
I really appreciate that, your perspective, Erin, because sometimes it's so dependent on like the branch manager and the school librarian, and that's the connection you make. So, and that's a great connection, but it's not necessarily sustainable. It depends on the personality, and in some cases, the principal. Do they care about libraries or not? It makes a huge difference. And we'll talk about sustainability in a minute, but Pilar, would you like to add anything about partnerships? And also, before I launch into Pilar, feel free to add comments in the chat or in the Q&A. We're watching that, and if we don't respond right away, we will get back to you. So please go ahead, Pilar.
No, thank you, Susan. Yeah, my comments are going to very much align with what has been said. I think we in public libraries, I think, have a hard time saying no to anything. So I think for us to be able to do, we'd rather do a few things really, really well than a bunch of things really poorly. So similar to what Felton and Melanie and Aaron have said, we're very particular in terms of going into significant partnerships that have a memorandum of understanding with mutual benefits. So with the school divisions, we have a partnership at the highest level, so at the sort of superintendent level, and that filters down. And then we also have partnership agreements, and there's specific criteria that staff check to make sure that, is this a workable situation and going to benefit both parties? And we also do it for things that have the highest impact. So in relation to schools, it's around, we call it summer starts, or a summer reading and some programming, the loss of learning over the summer, addressing that. The library card as your student card, the student card is your library card, that initiative. And I've just forgotten the other one. Anyway, we try to really focus on the high impact things, because I think we could do many, many, many things. It's hard for us because we're so service oriented sometimes to pick what's the best. So
that is terrific. Thank you very much, Pilar. So I'm going to move to a topic, and I certainly don't in any way mean to be negative at all, because we want to be positive in our responses and with our audience. But there right now is a lot going on politically with libraries. Library boards, challenges to materials, pandemic recovery, a lot of retirements. How are some of these challenges affecting you and your libraries? And can you provide any guidance to our participants here today or the wider grade level reading audience? Those challenges are coming kind of fast and fast not. So any thoughts on that?
I can start.
Somebody. Okay, go ahead, Pilar. Thank you.
I mean, I think that we've been inundated, I think, from a variety of spectrums across the ideological, whatever you call it, in terms of what's appropriate and not appropriate to access. So just recently we call them rainbow story times in celebration of Pride. And we had a number of letters, and I'm not as serious as some other libraries that I understand across Canada and the States. So I think that's one challenge. I think staffing is another challenge. Like other libraries, we temporarily laid staff off because we were not open. And then I think we have a third of our public service staff is brand new. So that in itself is a challenge, onboarding. And I think that brings me to my third, I think, a solution. One of the solutions is to be really grounded in our values. So that intellectual freedom and freedom of expression, it's not about promoting the ideas themselves. It's about promoting access. See, and I think sometimes we lose that pivotal and meaningful word access to. We're not promoting a particular point of view. We're promoting the right to access. And I think when you have new staff, it's critical that we have that training and that onboarding in terms of what a fundamental value that is for public libraries. And that freedom of expression is a right that is in Canada and the United States that we need to continue to uphold. So just a few thoughts off the top of my head. Yeah.
No, that's fascinating. I'd love to hear what our other panelists have to say about some of these challenges. And also it's interesting what you said about your new staff, because in a way here as being a commissioner at my county library, I know that we went through the pandemic, we all did, and now we're coming out of that. And there are some folks who want to return to whatever we had before, but we're not really returning to what we had before. And we want to determine what's best to move forward, what did work, what didn't work. A lot of those accommodations or services we made, we want to continue. So that impact of COVID and our pandemic services is another topic I'm really interested in among the challenges. So I will see who's ready to talk, possibly. I don't know, Felton, you look like you're ready to talk, huh?
I guess so. So 2 points. I think, first of all, to your question, I think it's a time of great anxiety for our staff. I mean, there was a period there within a week with what was happening, you know, Valdi, just the pandemic, Roe, everything, where I just felt like our staff was just feeling like the world was coming to an end, right? And so we just had to, I just had to just put something out and just let them know things are going to be okay, right? And, you know, just recognizing that, you know, while there are a lot of things happening, you know, this too shall pass, and we're going to just keep on doing what we do and be that light for so many people who feel the same way out in the community. Then second, though, and I hope Erin can speak to this, is that as I went to, you know, DC for ALA, and I didn't burn things down to the ground like my daughters asked me to. I said, I will not burn things down for you guys, but I understand your point. I talked to a lot of librarians about what was happening, and especially the folks who were in small library systems really felt like they were overwhelmed by the level of the power image that many of the people who were pushing them were in power, had more power than them. They really felt kind of threatened by this. And while many of those in urban libraries or bigger libraries really didn't feel like, you know, they were going to be in a space where they might lose their job, many of those were hearing it from heads of the school system or whatever. And they were like, no, you are not going to have that book on your shelf, or we'll just get rid of you. Right. And so, you know, you know, it was, all I could do was kind of pat him on the shoulder and say, just keep going, just keep fighting. But Erin, I don't know, have you had similar conversations with folks?
So just recently, there's a small town in Iowa, not too far from here, named Vinton, and it's been in the national news because the director that was there for, I think, 2 years or so, she left in May, and then the interim director just left because the vocal minority in the town had been causing a ruckus about some of the books that were on display. There was a picture book about Joe Biden, and then some LGBTQ. I know it was just a picture book about Joe Biden. Like there's no agenda. And, you know, they both resigned, and their full-time library staff quit because they were being bullied. And I think what happens, especially in small towns, is how this is your neighbor. This is somebody you see in the grocery store all the time. And, you know, you might see in church if you go to church. And I think that there really is that feeling of like, oh, you know, Mary across the way, she doesn't like this book, and it's hard to have a conversation because it's uncomfortable. And I know that a lot of small places, especially in the Midwest, we tend to be, you know, we want to be nice and not have an unpleasant exchange. And what that leads me to tell like my friends or people in the community is that, you know, I think libraries do have a role to encourage their patrons to advocate for us on our behalf, even if it's just writing to the city council and being like, hey, I had this really positive experience at the library and I just wanted to tell you about it, or, you know, complimenting the displays, so that the people that are making monetary decisions have an idea about what the library means to the community, so that it's not just the people that are dissatisfied all the time that can complain, because if you don't hear about the positives, you're never going to know. So that's, I think, the one thing that I would encourage all of our libraries, but especially our small ones, is to, you know, tell your people to brag on you, because, you know, I would say a lot of us librarians are not very good at patting ourselves on the shoulder, and we could all be better about that.
Great response, Erin, and thanks, Pat. Tell folks to brag on you. That's real. I love that. Melanie, any comments to make about this challenging topic?
No, I think they said it so well. I would just say that taking care of the staff is really important right now. The ones that are hearing these complaints on the front line, who may not as be well equipped to respond to them as we would like, even with all the training and all the compassion and all the smarts and knowledge. It's an ongoing challenge. Just how do we take care of staff so that they aren't burned out by what's going on? But they said it really well about what the challenges are. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Thank you. It is a challenging time, but we can make a huge difference, and we're all dedicated to that. And I think focusing on our values is really so important to do with our staff, with our boards, with our commissions, our support groups, and the general community at large. So one of the things that I've found, we have a couple questions in the Q&A that hopefully we'll have time to get to. Something I wanted, though, our panelists to respond to is one of the things that I've found during my career is that scaling some of the amazing initiatives we have going on in our communities can be very difficult and challenging. And I remember when I served as the director of the Institute of Museum and Library Services, you'd get all these good ideas and people would say, well, that's not happening in my library. Well, it doesn't necessarily happen in every single one in the US or Canada for that matter. But the partnership that libraries have created with the Campaign for Grade Level Reading, I think, is an extremely impactful model of how we can begin to create a scalable system for the great services we're providing. So do you folks have any thoughts on how the campaign could be a better ally to public libraries, or how public libraries become better allies to the campaign? And even if it's not just the campaign, you may have another partner that you feel like you've really scaled with as well. So how do you try to make your programs scalable, and how do you see the Campaign for Grade Level Reading having an impact on that as well? Let's see, everybody's thinking here. Pilar, are you ready? You look like you have some ideas.
I think there's huge opportunity to coordinate and make this program more widespread. I'm not sure how prominent and prevalent the grade level reading program is in Canada. I can see, again, huge opportunity here. And I think some of the great sort of collaborative initiatives of the Urban Libraries Council or our own Canadian Urban Libraries Council that have sort of that one book we do across Canada in both French and English. So I think and I'd love to see our program, which is with Alberta Health, expanded across Canada, for example. So I think that is a great benefit. Sometimes I think we like to reinvent the wheel, we want to, and I think it's okay not to, and just to share and not recreate. And there can still be some customization and personalization in each of the way we do things. So my thoughts. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Okay, any thoughts? Our other panelists? Melanie, did you have something?
Well, I was just going to say, the only thing I would say is that librarians are really good, at sharing within our own profession and our own field, whether that's through ULC or PLA or ALA. What I think we're not as good at is going to the experts in other fields and really deeply connecting with them. And so I think that Campaign for Grade Level Reading, because they're not all librarians and they're not all educators, and if you look at that list of partners and the supporters, they're huge. So what can our people on the front line learn from those other folks? And I think a lot of times, for good reason, you want the CEO or the executive director to be the one that's the affiliate person for your organization. And sometimes it needs to be the youth services director. So I think it's thinking about who does the campaign really want in those meetings? Yes, you want the CEO, but they can't be all things to all people, and they may not be the subject expertise, although we're faking it pretty well today. But yeah, you know what I mean? Yeah.
Oh, that's that's so important, Melanie, about thinking strategically about who is the right person to put forward for some of these initiatives, the right staff member, the right work group, because it is not always the head honcho or whatever whatever that person might be. That's not always the one to seal the deal. But Felton, you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, well, one of the things, and as I look through the list of folks who were partnering with the campaign, I didn't see the American Library Association on the list. And maybe I missed it, but I didn't see them on there. And I was like, that's a big miss for us, and something that we should really work on trying to bring our association in compatible with the campaign.
That's an interesting observation. Yes. And I know there have been a number, we had some information from ALSC and some other places here, but that's strategically, we should really try to work more on that partnership and also bring the campaign in. Erin, did you want to make any comments?
I feel a little bit out of my league commenting on that, but if the campaign were to want to meet with ALSC or ARSL or any of the other library associations, but even within the state, like working with the state library associations or even the state librarians themselves or the consultants. I know that there are some partnerships within the states, but I don't know that every state is involved. So I think that might be a helpful way to, get the word out even more than it is now.
And it is terrific to have you with us, Erin, from Iowa, but also representing ARSL, the Association of Rural and Small Libraries. This is an amazing group, and your connection with the campaign is amazing too, because folks from ARSL, and I don't mean to generalize, but usually the ARSL folks don't get to ALA. They don't get to PLA. Last year they came out to Reno for their conference, which was fun. But they are an amazing group of people who talk about on the ground work. I'm very proud of them because the California State Library helped ARSL kind of move into the 21st century. But it's a great group, and we want to try to leverage those associations. And I really appreciated Melanie's comment about getting outside of our own little box and making connections with other industries, other points of view. I mean, that's so endemic in design thinking that we're doing so much more now. Just really is a good way to approach things. So I wanted to pose one other question, and that is, what do you see? Well, let me rephrase that. We see all these great achievements that we saw with our testimonial video folks and all the great things you're doing, but what do you see as your major challenges in the near future or the far future? Maybe the better question is, what keeps you up at night in terms of your relevance or your survival? What are those challenges? And in a way, working with the Campaign for Grade Level Reading, to understand that, they might be able to help you on those challenges. But what are some of your worries about the future, or things that hey, we really have to tackle this to continue our success? Pilar, do you have some thoughts?
Such a good question. I mean, I think we continually struggle with, awareness and making people aware of what we do, that we're not the library that you used as a child. I think we struggle with focus. I think again, I kind of alluded to this throughout, and I think there's a question too, I think in the Q&A about that. And we've found it, we hire social workers, we are taking on a lot, because we're good at what we do, and we really want to help community. And I think the COVID has, exacerbated many things, including houselessness and opioid addiction. And my own library, our downtown urban public library, is really struggling with incidents with opioids. So it's just how do we set more clear boundaries while not being oppositional or antagonistic in that approach? I think it's more, how do we collaborate with, as Melanie noted, bringing in other experts who can help fill the void rather than us do it ourselves. And I think it's honoring that other expertise, and I think it's okay to sometimes say no in a really polite and respectful way, to focus on what we do really, really well. And I think early literacy, digital literacy, those are things that are in libraries, public libraries' wheelhouses. I think that we do exceptionally well, and we have so many opportunities there that we would never run out of stuff to do. So those are things that are on my mind lately.
You know, those are so interesting, Pilar. I appreciate your comments. And I often say that, you know, being focused is being very important. And I think we have to prioritize where we put our energies and really use the traction we might bring to a relationship. But I often find that libraries are not the top of mind when you were talking about awareness.
Yeah.
And this is a broad generalization, but libraries are not the top of mind. And when you say, well, have you thought about the library as being a partner for this or that? I have rarely heard anybody say no. I've heard people say, oh, the library, of course. Why didn't I think of the library? So it's that, how do we get to be top of mind? And even though we do know that we're very desired partners, people are always wanting to partner with us because we're so good and we give away all our energy. It's not a parallel partnership, as Felton says, but it's just even being top of mind and being at the table or dragging a chair to the table. But Melanie, did you want to make any comments on that?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I've been reading Kenneth's question in the Q&A over and over again, because I think this is what I think part of our challenge is, and it goes to what Pilar was just talking about. Right now, libraries are responding to symptoms. You know, we are not getting as communities upstream of the problems. And that's how I'm trying to position my library and the work that I am passionate about, is how do we get communities upstream of those issues? So rather than always responding to the library needs social workers because, why? What is the because? So I'll give you an example. And, you know, and Kenneth, I always say, if you haven't read his question in the Q&A, please take a look at it. Because I always say, you know, when every child knows how to read, we'll stop doing this work. When everybody who needs affordable housing has affordable housing, we will stop helping people get rental assistance. When everybody who wants a job has a job, the library will wash its hands of all of that. But that's not where we are, because we can't get upstream of what's causing the problem to begin with, which is why, full circle, focusing on early literacy and education is so critical, because that does get you upstream of a lot of issues. But we have been using a lot of human-centered design work in our own practice here, but also using it with our community, teaching our community how to really dissect its issues, and the library's leading these efforts, bringing regular citizens to the table in a more participatory style of democracy and about solving problems. And I think that's the future of libraries, so that maybe we can stop always responding to the symptom and we can actually help illuminate solutions to the problems.
Thank you, Melanie. That I love that thought of, we're not upstream, and that's where we need to be. And we did put Kenneth's question in the chat. So if you didn't see it in the Q&A, it's in the chat. It was really interesting, really about, you know, is the library, you know, really getting into all kinds of sectors, and should we really stay in our lane a little bit more? But it's interesting. I remember that when I was at one of the first convenings to develop the Aspen Institute dialogue on the future of public libraries, we had a number of folks there from community centers and nonprofits that were doing good, important community work. And there was tension. There was tension there, because is the library trying to take over our space? No, we're just trying to help you succeed. But there's that ongoing tension. I think that also drives some of the tension we have with school districts too, in some cases. So Erin or Felton, anything else you want to add to this?
I mean, I feel like Pilar and Melanie said everything really well. I think also to Kenneth's question, it's like, yes, you can have these organizations that are doing the work, but you know, even having like your representatives or your council people spreading the word. But I mean, if you have never sat down with somebody who hunts and pecks on a keyboard, who tries to fill out anything online when they don't have the skills to do that, then you begin to understand what kind of need there is. And you know, as library people, we want to go out of our way to make that happen. And you know, like having a social worker on staff just to help with things like that is a godsend. And I mean, we're lucky on our staff that, you know, we have an adult services person who is like interested in helping people with that, and she will make appointments and sit down with people to help them fill out their rental assistance. But you know, we don't all have the staff to be able to do that. So I think that you know, while it can be seen in some ways that we might be overstepping our bounds, it's also like we see on the opposite end of like how much of a struggle it is for people to even like make an appointment to get to the DMV and then like be able to go to the DMV if they need a new license. So I think that if we can reduce some of those barriers to help people, we have to do that for now. But I too would like to be upstream of all of this stuff.
Wouldn't that be great? I can, you know, it's when we got into the whole workforce development field, probably in like 2010 or so, there was a lot of controversy there and people didn't want to go to I'm sorry, they didn't want to go to those workforce offices. They wanted to come to the library where their kid could sit down and read and they could get some help on the computer. I mean, we're it. But hey, we are almost at our time. So I just wanted to see if our panelists wanted to make any quick closing comments about their work with the campaign for grade level reading. There's my timer when we're supposed to be done. Any final comments? It's been wonderful to have all of you here and represent these wonderful different perspectives. And I know the campaign is proud of all of you and so glad to have you involved with the work that are doing. And I think I'm about ready to hand it over to Siobhan. There she is. Okay.
Well, thank you, Susan and Pilar and Felton, Melanie and Erin. You all were fabulous. This was a wonderful, wonderful conversation. I've been watching a lot of conversation going on among the grade level reading staff as well, saying this was a fabulous conversation. So I can't tell you how wonderful it's been to have you, to see you all again. It's been such a great pleasure. You all did such a great job. So, and thank you for your time and your commitment. And we hope to see you again in another grade level reading webinar, seminar, whatever. All right, now I have the honor of, after another short video, of introducing the founder and managing director of the Campaign for Grade Level Reading, Ralph Smith, who is a force of nature and someone with whom I am absolutely privileged to work. But Ralph will come on just after this video, and see you after Ralph.
Thank you, Siobhan. Thanks to the panel for a really inspiring conversation. It was informative, it was grounded, and in many respects, it was fearless. And that is really an important dimension that's truly appreciated by us here at the campaign. If you saw that excerpt from our identity video, what I'd like you to know is that from today forward, when that excerpt is played, we will add one more slide. The slide acknowledging the Institute of Museum and Library Services, IMLS, as a founding partner. The founding partners that you saw were those who were with us in 2010. But when Susan Hildreth assumed leadership of IMLS in 2011, you know, she faced an agenda filled with demands and pressures and expectations for her time, her attention, and her energy. We are so appreciative that despite that formidable agenda, Susan chose to make time and invest energy in lifting up what were then the aspirations of the campaign for grade level reading, and to connect us in deep and durable ways to the MILS constituency, the nation's libraries and museums. Because of Susan's care and attention, the campaign for grade level reading has been the grateful beneficiary of a nationwide network of GLR supporting libraries. I love this map. I love this map. And as with every map, what is exponentially more interesting and more important are the stories behind the map. Let me encourage you to hear a bit more of these stories by sampling this buffet of shout outs we're in the process of collecting. And you will hear two of them today. And if we're lucky, we're going to pull up, and those of you who wish to stay could listen to the rest. But in any case, you could find them on YouTube. You know, it goes without saying, and it should go without saying, but on behalf of the CGLR team, the local funders who support the sponsoring coalitions in over 350 communities across the nation, we are especially grateful to those libraries that accepted the call of those local sponsoring coalition to serve as lead in their local communities. And when we look at Arlington and Cedar Rapids and Philadelphia and Richland and Roanoke and Wayne County, Mid-York, San Diego, San Jose, Piedmont Regional, what we see are a set of libraries that stepped up, stood up, and took on the challenge of leading a community coalition that was committed to putting a stake in the ground around grade level reading, to developing a plan to make that stake and that aspiration a reality, and to pull together the resources that were needed. And we are really delighted by this set of libraries, and we look forward to continuing to work with them in the future. You know, in addition to the folks who are leading the campaigns, there are librarians, library leaders, and professional staff who have willingly and in some instances repeatedly shared their experience and their expertise with the GLR network. They are among our favorite Leo faculty. And when I think of Jenny and Simone and Chrissy and Joanna and Antonia and Carlene, Liz, Elizabeth, Amber, and Sheila, we have learned so much from them. and so much with them that we are really proud to call them Leo faculty. And we are adding to that faculty today, the members of this panel who have engaged in this conversation. And we are hoping that you will accept the nomination to be a member of of our Leo faculty, and will let us know what you think of our notion that emerging from the pandemic, we see bright spots and silver linings. And there are three that we've been holding up. One, there's greater sense of urgency around solving for digital equity. Two, there's a new appreciation for making sure that parents are equipped and supported to play the role of an essential partner in the learning and development and success of their children. And thirdly, there's a realization, an even deeper realization, that schools cannot do this alone, and that equitable learning recovery will require an approach that we've been calling learning happens everywhere, where everyday places and spaces become powerfully rich learning environments. We're hoping to get your take on that, because in many respects, on all of those, we are following the lead of libraries who have been working in digital equity, who have embraced parents and been, in some cases, the 211, 311, 411, 911 for parents, and who epitomize this notion that learning doesn't just happen within the four walls of a school or on a campus. It happens in a whole lot of places, and libraries have been proven themselves to be one of those places. You know, along with United Way's, who we recognized last year, libraries are second to none in realizing the three-part aspiration the Campaign for Grade Level Reading has of its partners. Libraries lend and assist. They help with the work. Libraries amplify our messages. Libraries extend our reach, as that map shows. We could not ask for more or for better from any set of partners than we have gotten from the nation's libraries. And Suzanne Hildreth's determination in 2011 has carried over to all of our successes, including the current incumbent. And we are grateful to her, grateful to her successors, grateful for those libraries all across the country. And we thought we would take this occasion at the start of our 2022 GLR week to say deep, heartfelt, thank you. Thank you. And one sign of our seriousness about that is how absolutely quickly we jumped on the opportunity to get one of the nation's premier librarians, Siobhan Reardon, having led in Brooklyn and led admirably in Philadelphia. As soon as we had the chance, we asked her to join us to lead this work. And Siobhan, I'm so grateful that you said yes. And I want to thank you for your leadership. And you know, when I say thank you, it has a lot less to do with what you've done so far than it has to do with expectations for what you're going to do from here on in. So Siobhan, thanks for today. You're on.
Okay, Ralph, thank you. Talk about passing a gauntlet. It's a privilege, as I said, it's a privilege to be able to work with you, Ralph. My time with the campaign thus far has been an extraordinary learning opportunity on lots of levels. And so to everybody who has joined us today, again, thank you. I want to remind you all to make sure you fill out the questionnaire on our survey. You can see more and come back to us and check out the conference site for more events that are occurring the rest of the week. Each day we'll have a plenary session on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And of course, join us for the All-America City Awards, which are a major part of the work occurring this week. And as the campaign is a co-sponsor of that with the National League of Cities. Before we leave you, I want to make sure you stay on board to watch the shout out for from the Toledo Lucas County Public Library. Again, thank you again for all of your support of the campaign and for joining us today. And Ralph, our fearless leader, thank you for everything you do for little people. Thank you.
For the past 8 years, the Ready to Read team has touched the lives of more than 20,000 families in Ohio's Lucas County. This donor-funded program helps show families how to build early literacy skills from the moment their child is born in preparation for kindergarten. Families who participate receive a free kit with books and learning materials. Working for the Ready to Read program is the best job. We go all over the city to find parents, we set up tables at grocery stores, laundromats, we ride public transit, we visit the NICU at Toledo Hospital, and more. We visit as many different places as we can to find families and share how vital early literacy is for their little ones. No 2 days are ever alike. Parents trained at the NICU have certainly enjoyed the hopeful approach the Ready to Read program encourages. When parents are most concerned about helping their baby breathe and eat, it can be refreshing to be able to talk about how to help their child prepare to be successful in kindergarten. When we are presenting at the NICU, we like to let families know that the Toledo Library is here for them every step of the way in their parenting journey. We've had many positive responses from parents about the Ready to Read program.
Love this program. I learned new tips to share with my baby.
This training was excellent. Sometimes things that give advice about parenting can feel overwhelming or make me feel super behind or inadequate, but this was easy to understand and presented in an encouraging way.
This information was really helpful and I feel better prepared to raise my daughter.
We want to thank all of the families we've trained in the past 8 years for letting us into their lives, and thank you for choosing our program for the Top Innovator Award. It is an honor.